Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to Inner Drive. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button because today's explainer is going to completely blow your mind, no cap. We are diving into a massive medical mystery that genuinely sounds like it was ripped straight out of a dystopian sci-fi movie. But I promise you, this is 100% real and clinically documented. Seriously, the sink khatra chal raha hai here. I want you to just pause for a second and imagine the absolute terror of drowning. Usually when we think of drowning, our brains instantly go to water, right? Like being pulled under a massive wave in the ocean or getting trapped in a freezing lake. But what if that exact same suffocating sensation happened to you while you were sitting in a perfectly dry room? What if the fatal threat wasn't the physical water surrounding you, but this invisible microscopic invader that literally hijacks your system and turns your own body against itself? Yeah, it is as terrifying as it sounds. Today we are unmasking the reality behind the Hantavirus outbreak. We're going to break down exactly what this bizarre virus is. We're going to trace its wild, deadly history across the globe, and we are looking closely at that 2026 cruise ship incident that recently had the entire internet spiraling into a massive panic. My ultimate goal for us today, we are replacing all that chaotic internet doom scrolling with pure, grounded, structured understanding.
So let's start with a quote that basically sets the stage for this entire nightmare scenario. A healthy guy walks into a hospital and almost drowns in his own lungs. This is the real-life, documented story of a guy we'll call JB. JB is 52 years old, and by every single medical metric we have, this guy was completely healthy. We're talking absolutely zero chronic diseases, no underlying conditions, totally fit. But out of nowhere, one day, he shows up at the emergency room. He's completely drenched in sweat, he's incredibly nauseous, and he's running a crazy high fever. Naturally, the doctors rush him in and take his vitals. And what they see on that monitor is instantly terrifying. His blood oxygen saturation has tanked to 89%. Now, if you aren't super familiar with how oxygen levels work, let me put that into perspective for you. A normal oxygen level is typically sitting pretty between 95 and 100%. Anything that drops under 90% is a massive red flag that requires immediate emergency medical intervention, because it literally means your body is actively suffocating from the inside out. JB is just sitting on the hospital bed, completely confused, totally unaware of what's going on around him. And to the medical team, that confusion is a huge siren going off, because it means his brain is physically starving for oxygen. Things are already going completely bat turn.
So you're probably asking yourself, why is his oxygen just plummeting like a rock? Well, they rush him in for a chest x-ray, and the image that comes back reveals a terrifying answer. JB's lungs are completely filled with fluid. And I'm not talking about your standard winter cold mucus or regular chest congestion. I mean literal physical fluid. Think about your lungs for a second. They are basically filled with millions of microscopic balloons, right? And their entire job is to trade the air you breathe in for the carbon dioxide in your blood. But when those balloons fill up with water, that physical barrier completely blocks the oxygen from ever reaching his bloodstream. It's literally like trying to breathe underwater. The medical team immediately hooks him up to supplemental oxygen, pushing higher and higher concentrations into his airways. And hey, for a brief fleeting moment, it actually seems to help. But as the hours slowly tick by, that extra oxygen just stops working entirely. His oxygen saturation continues its terrifying downward spiral. And guys, this is the exact moment where a really bad medical situation morphs into an absolute nightmare for the doctors. Why? Because if you are literally pumping pure, concentrated oxygen into a patient's lungs and it's still not fixing the hypoxemia, that means the lungs themselves are fundamentally, structurally failing. Within mere hours, JB experiences this rapid, unstoppable, cascading multi-organ failure. It's like dominoes falling inside his body. Step 1. Hypoxemia. His oxygen crashes so hard that he's immediately transferred to the intensive care unit. They have to fully sedate him, and a breathing tube is placed down his throat just so a machine can physically force his lungs to expand and breathe for him. But it doesn't stop there. Step 2. Intensive care and shock. Out of nowhere, his blood pressure suddenly drops even more. His body's entire delivery system is failing. Blood can't get to his organs, and most crucially, it can't get to his brain, meaning he is literally seconds to minutes away from permanent, irreversible brain damage. The doctors are scrambling, pumping him full of heavy medications to constrict his blood vessels and force his heart to beat harder, just to keep the pressure up. But bro, it's just not enough. Leading straight into step 3, kidney failure. Shortly after arriving in the ICU, JB just completely stops making urine. His kidneys shut down entirely, meaning all the natural toxins your body produces are now rapidly building up in his bloodstream. He has to be hooked up to a dialysis machine. Every major system in his body is collapsing at the exact same time. At this point, the medical team is basically doing real-time, high-stakes detective work. They have a man literally dying right in front of them, and they have absolutely no idea why. They have to methodically rule out the usual medical suspects, one by one. Could it be pneumonia? I mean, that's the most common cause of lung failure, right? Well, severe pneumonia usually comes with a heavy, productive cough, and JB didn't have one at all. Plus, all the standard tests for common respiratory bacteria and viruses came back totally negative. So, boom, pneumonia's out. Okay, could it be an autoimmune disease where the body's own immune system malfunctions and starts attacking the lungs and kidneys simultaneously? It's definitely possible, but JB had zero medical history of that, and his blood markers for autoimmune diseases showed nothing. Ruled out. Could it be a really severe, rare fungal infection? They checked the high-resolution CT scans, but the results were borderline at best, nothing definitive. It was incredibly frustrating for the doctors. The puzzle pieces just weren't fitting together, and the clock was ticking down fast. Then, the medical team uncovered one single crucial detail that flipped the entire investigation upside down. While interviewing his family, they found out that right before experiencing this intense 7-day fever, JB had just returned from a trip to Argentina. This one geographic clue was a total game changer. It instantly pointed doctors away from the common everyday illnesses you see in the ER and toward a much rarer, much deadlier global threat. Think about it. Without any evidence of pneumonia causing the fluid, the fact that his lungs were flooding meant his actual blood vessels were leaking fluid directly into his lung tissue. When you combine that specific type of shock with his recent travel history to South America, the doctors started to suspect a very specific type of virus. A virus that doesn't cause your standard chest cold or pneumonia, but rather suffocates the host by literally flooding their lungs from the inside. And that realization brings us face to face with the microscopic culprit, Hantavirus. Now, the absolutely crucial point to understand here is that hantavirus isn't just one single isolated virus. It's an entire family of viruses. And their primary hosts? Infected rodents. Mice, rats, voles. Humans generally catch it by inhaling airborne particles of infected rodent feces, urine, or saliva. I know, it's psychologically disturbing. As humans, we are evolutionarily wired to fear big, visible threats, like predators with sharp teeth, right? We aren't wired to fear microscopic dust particles floating invisibly in the air of a dusty shed or a cabin. But when inhaled, these specific viruses are known to cause either severe kidney failure or, as in JB's terrifying case, catastrophic cardiopulmonary failure. Once they had this theory, the doctors immediately ordered a highly specialized, totally non-standard molecular test for hantavirus. And sure enough, it came back positive.
To truly understand what kind of beast we are dealing with here, we have to zoom out and look at how humanity slowly discovered this family of viruses over time. Because this isn't a new threat. Back in 1951, right in the middle of the Korean War, United Nations troops who were stationed by the Hantan River started reporting this mysterious, highly fatal hemorrhagic fever that almost always ended in severe kidney failure. Thousands of soldiers got sick. It actually took until 1978 for a brilliant researcher named Dr. Ho Wing Lee to finally identify the specific rodent-borne virus responsible, and he named it the Hantavirus, after the river. But it wasn't just an isolated issue in Asia. Fast forward to 1993, and a massive, deadly outbreak suddenly occurred in the Four Corners region of the United States. And then shortly after that, in 1995, a completely distinct, genetically different strain was identified way down in Argentina, which researchers named the Andes virus. That 1993 Four Corners outbreak in the U.S., it is a fascinating, mind-bending lesson in how deeply connected we are to ecology. During that outbreak, young, incredibly healthy people, including a 19-year-old competitive marathon runner, were suddenly collapsing and dying from fluid-filled lungs. Medical investigators soon realized the virus, known as sin nombre, had actually likely been present in North America for centuries. But why did it suddenly explode into a lethal outbreak in 1993? It turns out global weather shifts were entirely to blame. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupted all the way over in the Philippines. That massive eruption dropped global temperatures and caused massive, totally unprecedented rainfall in the American Southwest by 1993. All this extra rain created incredibly lush vegetation in the desert, which provided an unlimited food supply for mice, leading to a massive 10 times explosion in the rodent population. More rodents meant vastly more infected rodents and drastically more chances for humans to unknowingly cross paths with them. It brilliantly and terrifyingly illustrates how human health is intimately, unavoidably tied to our broader ecological surroundings. So, this historical deep dive brings us right back to South America and the massive clue from JB's travel history. In 1995, down in a very rural southern area of Argentina, doctors identified the Andes virus for the first time after 2 people suddenly stopped breathing and passed away under highly mysterious circumstances.
At first, they thought it was just another standard hantavirus strain, similar to the ones found in Asia or North America. But as global health researchers really started to study this specific South American strain in depth, they discovered something absolutely wild. Something that fundamentally altered how dangerous the medical community considered this entire virus family to be. The scene was about to get a whole lot more complicated. And guys, this is the terrifying difference they found. Standard hantaviruses, like the ones that cause kidney issues in Asia or the Sinombre virus that caused the US outbreak, are transmitted from rodent to human only. You cannot catch it from another person. But the Andes virus, it is uniquely capable of human-to-human transmission. Investigators tracking the virus found that in close quarters, the virus was actually spreading among tight clusters of people. During a well-documented 2018 outbreak, one single infected person attended a birthday party, and weeks later, several attendees who had absolutely no contact with rodents got critically sick. Another infected person passed away, and 10 different people who simply attended his wake became seriously ill shortly after. When a virus with this high of a fatality rate can jump from human to human, every single social interaction suddenly feels like a massive potential threat. Which leads us directly into the massive global headlines that have been causing so much intense panic recently. Let's methodically break down exactly what happened during the 2026 cruise ship incident so we can separate the facts from the fear. A group of people boarded a luxury cruise ship in Argentina, right near the exact region where the Andes virus is heavily endemic. 5 days into the cruise, a passenger starts feeling really ill. 5 days after that, he tragically passes away on the ship. The ship eventually docks at St. Helena Island, and his grieving wife takes a flight home to South Africa. But shockingly, when she lands, she immediately collapses and also passes away. Meanwhile, another entirely different passenger on that same ship becomes critically ill, is medically evacuated to South Africa, and tests positive for hantavirus. More passengers start falling ill. The World Health Organization immediately steps in, runs the diagnostics, identifies 7 total cases on board, and confirms everyone's worst fear. It is, in fact, the human-to-human transmissible Andes virus.
Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. Hearing about a mysterious, highly lethal virus spreading rapidly among passengers on an international cruise ship instantly triggers our collective global trauma from the year 2020. Our brains are literal pattern recognition machines, and the moment this news dropped, the internet immediately went into an absolute frenzy, assuming civilization was about to lock down and shut down all over again. People's damag kharab was happening everywhere. But we really need to pause, take a breath, and address this fear head-on, because blind panic and educated awareness are not the same thing at all. We have to ask the logical question: why is the 2026 situation fundamentally scientifically different from what we went through in 2020?
The answer to that anxiety basically comes down to one absolutely crucial fact. We know this virus. In early 2020, humanity was dealing with a completely novel pathogen. It was a blank slate, and that massive unknown is what makes any situation infinitely dangerous. But medical science has over 30 years of hard, peer-reviewed data on the Andes virus. We know exactly how it operates. The extensive genetic sequencing from the 1996 and 2018 outbreaks showed no major mutations, and the 2026 cruise ship strain appears to behave the exact same way. Yes, human-to-human transmission is possible, but it is heavily limited to extremely close, intimate, prolonged contacts, making it far, far less efficient at spreading globally than a highly contagious airborne respiratory pandemic. And perhaps most importantly, because the global alarms have already been raised, hospitals worldwide now know exactly what symptoms to look for, the specific tests to run, and how to treat it, so they don't accidentally misdiagnose it as just another case of severe pneumonia.
And that reassuring reality brings us right back to JB, our 52-year-old patient from the very beginning of this explainer. JB actually ended up having a slightly different strain of hantavirus from the northern part of Argentina, not the human-to-human Andes strain from the south, but his severe cardiopulmonary symptoms were nearly identical. Because his doctors played detective and correctly identified the incredibly rare virus, they knew exactly how to support his failing systems. JB spent 40 grueling, terrifying days completely sedated in the intensive care unit. But with the right support, over time, his incredible immune system fought back and cleared the virus. Slowly, his lungs drained of all that fluid, his dangerously low blood pressure stabilized, and amazingly, his kidneys completely recovered their function. Thanks to a hyper-accurate diagnosis and relentless intensive supportive care, JB actually walked out of that hospital and made a 100% full recovery.
So, after hearing all of this wild medical history, what should you actually take away from it? Instead of spiraling into internet panic every time a new headline drops, I want to give you some highly actionable, deeply grounded public health advice. Consider these 3 simple rules for life. 1. Wash your hands thoroughly for a full 20 seconds using actual soap, especially when you get home from being out or right before you eat. It physically destroys the invisible pathogens. 2. If you feel sick or if you have a fever, just stay home. Don't push it, don't be a hero, rest. And 3, this is the big one. If you ever have genuine trouble drawing a full breath, go to the emergency room immediately. Doing these 3 incredibly basic things is genuinely the most practical, effective way to protect yourself, not just from rare things like Hantavirus, but from countless other everyday pathogens. As we wrap up, I really want to leave you with this final, super provocative thought to chew on. The most dangerous part of a disease outbreak usually isn't the disease itself, it's the confusion. In our hyper-connected world, unverified fear spreads and mutates far faster than any biological pathogen ever could. But by taking the time to actually understand the science, the deep history, and the complex ecology of diseases like Hantavirus, you totally empower yourself. You successfully replace that blind, paralyzing fear with hard, actionable data. Thank you so much for joining me on this Inner Drive Explainer today. Keep asking those big questions, stay relentlessly informed, hit that subscribe button if you want more deep dives like this, and I will definitely see you guys in the next one. Peace!